A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to the Smart and Sustainable Leadership Hiring Colloquium, a joint initiative by Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the Voice of India's Business and Industry, and Sapphire Human Solutions, India's premium retained executive search firm. As business complexities increase, so does the complexities of hiring and attracting the right leadership talent. Today at this colloquium, we have some of the most renowned leaders of corporate India to deliberate on the importance of leadership hiring, the evolving priorities of the leadership, and the need for more women in leadership roles. Ladies and gentlemen, this colloquium is presented by SHL. To begin our day, I would like to invite Mr. Ankit Bansal, founder and CEO, Sapphire Human Solutions, for the welcome address and to throw some light on the CXO Moves annual report. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ankit Bansal.
Thank you, Ankita. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be in midst of such senior business leaders of corporate India. And I would like to welcome you all to the Smart and Sustainable Leadership Hiring Colloquium. Over the years, the business ecology has become very complex and uncertain. Decision making in today's time is both an art and science. Considering every constant, every variable, coming to the right conclusion is critical to success of any business. And hiring the right leadership talent probably sits right at the top of decision you cannot go wrong given the VUCA world we operate in. Then came the pandemic and it ushered in a new normal. What the pandemic also did was highlight the importance of leadership and, more importantly, criticality of hiring the right leaders. In a tech-enabled and a capital surplus world, quality of leadership is what solely separates the champions from the also-rans. Strengthening the decision-making process for hiring CXOs is at the core of this report that is getting launched today, turning data harnessed from everyday news reports into actionable insights. The CXO Moves annual report is a ready reckoner that is designed to enhance the CXO hiring process. The purpose of this comprehensive study of the movements of CXOs across industries is to succinctly showcase the underlying trends, gain inferences, thereby enhancing the decision-making process for CXO hiring. This report is a culmination of a year-long research jointly done by Sapphire Human Solutions and FICCI, analyzing more than 4,000 CXO movements that took place and were reported in the year 2020-21. The report provides a lot of insights, which I'm sure the users will find very, very useful. How many CXO movements happen in India every month? Which month does it peak? Which months are lean? How does leadership hiring look across sectors? Which sector is the biggest hirer? Are companies relying on internal promotions or hiring talent externally? Where is hiring happening? Is it Indian companies? Is it multinationals? Are large companies hiring, or is it the MSMEs who are picking up? How many women leaders are getting hired? How do various sectors fare when it comes to diversity hiring? These and many more insights, it is what the CXO Moves annual report promises. It aims to equip you with relevant data points and analysis that would be useful when you take leadership decisions in your company. The report also corroborates empirical analysis with great industry perspective, coming from industry leaders from both HR as well as business. Our partnership with FICCI provides the report an unparalleled industry perspective, which helps in converting great intelligence, which is available in this report, into actionable insights for our users and readers. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our partners FICCI, Mr. Shenoy, Mrityunjay, Viniti for their contribution, without which this report wouldn't have been possible. Finally, I would like to sum up by saying that this report is our endeavor to improve the quality of leadership hiring in this country, leading to stronger, more resilient, and more profitable businesses, thus resulting in a prosperous nation and people. I hope you like the report and find it useful as much as we loved preparing it and bringing it to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bansal, for setting the context and for delivering the welcome address. Now inviting Mr. Dilip Shenoy, Secretary General FICCI, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you, Ankita, and to Mr. Ranjan Kumar Mohapatra, co-chair of the FICCI HR Committee and Director HR Indian Oil Corporation, Mr. Ankit Bansal, founder and CEO of Sapphire Human Solutions, whom we just heard, Mr. Shashank Dwivedi, MD, SHL, my colleague Manish Mithunjay and Mentee, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to this very special session on smart and sustainable leadership hiring, which is FICCI SHS initiative. And it is about something which you're going to continue and institutionalize going ahead. It is the CXO Moves annual report, a study of C-suite movements in India. As we navigate our way through the countless waves of COVID, depending on which part of the world and which part of the country you're in, for the first time, we have actually witnessed economic downturn because of non-economic reasons. And if I just eliminate the 1918 pandemic, and even the SARS and all was not a really global phenomena, it was actually isolated, right? Anyway, most businesses have remained resilient, led by people being resilient, for which all the HR teams, who are all here and across the country and across the world, deserves kudos and appreciation. I think they have really looked at challenges based on decreased demand, disrupted supply chain. But the good news is that we've already been, see green shoots in different parts of the economy. And we believe that this has been good for most of the companies as they're able to deal with disruption in supply chains and also look at a digital future ahead. For business leaders, it was actually important to identify these challenges early on. Earlier, I was in another call just yesterday where chairman of a company said that they first identified the possible changes and actions of the supply chain as early as November, December of 2019. And therefore, when the real pandemic and all struck, they had actually done a lot of work there. So they also looked at reinforcing and re-strategizing business operations. They are not, a panacea for reorganizing and anticipating new challenges. And I think that is half the battle won if we can do that. To take another example of a state in Orissa. Earlier cyclones were a challenge there. In COVID period, they had 2 cyclones and they had the preparedness ready. They had the action plan ready. And they minimized loss of lives, although they could not actually address the loss to property because that was a natural phenomena. Similarly, for organizations to exist and stay relevant, the role of leaders at the helm has evolved and has become multifaceted. We have seen multiple movements of CXOs over the last 18 months, not just within organizations, but also within sectors. And that has had challenges of managing costs versus promoting employee interests, operating alternate sources of revenue, leveraging the gig economy for the new normal. And of course, the whole thing of work from home or work from anywhere that it was there. Many firms realize that over-reliance on one geography, even for countries. For some of our export products, China accounted for 25% of our imports. For some of our import products, some countries are accounted for large percentage of imports. So relying on one geography, one product, and one client space could have long-term consequences, especially during times like these. And the question is what the businesses can do to pivot to new possibilities and at the same time keep loyalty to one customer. Textile companies found a downturn in apparel. They pivoted to manufacturing masks, PPE equipment, etc. And these basic questions, they are still applicable in the pandemic, continue to impact various sectors and industries. And we would need new skills and new talent, which are agile, which are niche skills to take on the new world in this direction, leveraging and mainstreaming gig in the Indian context. So you can, the old adage is never waste a crisis. And I think Indian industry has not wasted this crisis and is looking at, the retooling, re-equipping themselves for leadership in the future. But key is leadership in hiring. And therefore, this becomes a critical lever for organizations to transform and innovate. And the relevance of getting an agile, responsive leader for any enterprise further gets magnified. As Ankit said, the report has many dimensions. And we are happy to release the report today on CXO moves in the year 2021 in association with Sapphire Human Solutions. We have attempted to cover the needs across sectors and highlighted issues of hiring, gender, functional distribution. And I hope companies, those present here today and those not here, will find it insightful. I think I would like to now invite Mr. Ranjan Kumar Mohapatra, Co-Chair FICCI HR Committee and Director HR Indian Oil Corporation, to take the session forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shenoy, for your opening remark. And now inviting, like you said, Mr. Ranjan Kumar Mohapatra, Co-Chair, FICCI HR Committee and Director HR, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, to deliver the special address for the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankita, Mr. Dilip, Mr. Sushant, Mr. Ankit, Manish, Vijay, and all others present here, and all the people who are watching it also. In fact, it really gives me immense pleasure to be part of this distinguished event. I'm calling it distinguished in the sense that we are going to unveil a report of CXO Moves 2020. I think that itself makes this event unparalleled. So a study of C-suits, movements which has happened in India. So welcome to everyone, and I'm sure that this will be an occasion for brainstorming on smart and sustainable leadership, not only in terms of hiring and HR practices, but also looking at future beyond this pandemic and beyond this events which is happening right now. I think the key to creating a vibrant and sustainable company is to find ways to get all employees, particularly the top executives, personally engaged on a day-to-day basis on day-to-day corporate sustainability efforts. So yes, everybody is speaking on that, so I cannot be far away from that. The pandemic, I think has become a greatest challenge. So I think this is something to which we have faced after World War II, which has really changed the face of this face of the globe, I must say. But at the same time, although it is having a devastating effect on the business, and which we have seen, I think, with Vicky, Dilip, and Manish will agree with me, we have seen changes, impacts on business which is happening. But even when the small-term effects which we are talking of, I'm a bit sort of within inverted comma, a bit pessimistic that long-term economic impact will ripple for years, will take some time to recover. But at the same time, this positive side is that it has given us chance to regroup. It has given us opportunity to think about new innovative ways to tackle such cases. As far as C-suite movements are concerned, I think as far as we observe the effect, I understand there has been almost 960 odd CXO movements in the Q1 of FY21, which is a 27% jump over the April to June 2019, which was 754. And as Ankit was telling, around 19% of these overall CXO movements were women. So job requirements at the top of the corporations have changed. I think companies have come to expect much more from their C-level executives, because you need new and different skills to deal with today's business. Just before starting, we were discussing that I think probably I was quoting Dave Ulrich that in one of these articles, he was telling that no CEO is now comfortable without the CHRO around him. So that's something which has become a go of the day right now. So topic of the report is extremely apt, I think, in this changing VUCA world. But again, when we talk of VUCA, vulnerable, uncertain, complex, ambiguous due to pandemic, but I think probably successful HR professionals use an alternate VUCA model to build their strategies. So for me, it is vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability and agility. I think this is the VUCA. If you have a vision, if effective leaders do not allow change to cloud their vision, they might revise their strategy, but the vision must be achieved. So that's one, the focus on vision. A quick changing, unpredictable environment, but leaders must fully understand those changes and their impact on their business and must respond accordingly. There has to be clarity. The law of connection advises that leaders must communicate with openness, must communicate with sincerity, and focus on them, not on yourself, and offer direction and hope. This clarity needs to be there with the HR leaders or any leader, for any CXO for that matter. And then, of course, my favorite, I call it 3 A's: adaptability, agility, and alignment with business. I keep on repeating. I think to face the significant change caused by this virus, leaders must be flexible, they must be agile, they must adapt strategies, they must adapt to the new situation. If virtual medium is the key, we have to find ways to get the maximum productivity out of that. I think we have to reevaluate the environmental, the competitive forces, and we have to amend our ways. And if we do this, this new VUCA will take us forward. Successfully integrating sustainability into talent acquisition requires management to reconcile the gap between the personal and corporate values. I feel it is in 3 dimensions, whether it is formal, that is the job description, employment contracts, etc. Whether it is psychological, I think rewards, recognitions, expectations, commitment, all these things. And the third most important in this period, which has been more amplified, is social. What is the perception? Can we have a culture? What value? I mean, these all for me were definitely there, but a refocus on this will be more important. I think prior to COVID-19, organizations were already facing increased employee demands for transparency. Employee and prospective candidates will judge organization by the way they are treated. Employees during the pandemic, how we have treated our employees during the pandemic will decide about the people who will decide to come to that organization. Balance the decisions made today to resolve immediate concerns during the pandemic with the long-term impact on the employee and the employment brand. So I'm sure after the global financial crisis, this global M&A activity has accelerated. As the pandemic subsides, companies will focus more on expanding their geographic diversity because everybody has to reinvent, has to take the innovation to a higher level, and investment in the secondary markets to mitigate, manage risk. So business will not be the same again. And at this point of time, these are the challenges which C-suite leaders have to undertake, has to face as new operating models evolve. So with that, I am extremely happy that I'm a part of this exercise, this report that will be launched today. I once again welcome you all. I think we have beautiful sessions lined up. So all the participants will have a good time. So as the speakers and others as well. So thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks a lot.
Indeed, a special address. Thank you, Mr. Mahapatra. Now inviting Mr. Sushant Vivedi, Managing Director, India and Philippines, SHL, to present the opening address.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think the kickoff of the session has been absolutely wonderful. And it's a great forum to be able to go ahead and get associated with everybody over here. Let me call out in terms of moving forward. This is one of the forums and kinds of forums which helps us to retain our sanity in the COVID world. And what I'm going to go ahead and speak to is to just carry forward from the kind of insights we're hearing from Ankit, Dilip, and from Ranjan. So mobilizing leaders has always been a top challenge, pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID. The challenges which are going to be there are going to go ahead and only increase. And there was one important, very critical insight which I wanted to bring to the fore while these discussions go ahead and move forward, is to be able to bring in the power of context while we are going ahead and assessing leaders for our organizations and evaluating leaders for our organization. It stems from a deep-rooted research that we had gone ahead and done with Gartner a couple of years ago. But what you currently see on the screen, yes, we all know that the world is changing and it is definitely not going to slow down. Yeah. There are multiple facets of it which have been called in: importance of the gig economy, of the aging population, smart technology, diversity and inclusion, the financial crisis, well-being and mental health, and of course, COVID. And how do we go ahead and adapt ourselves? How do we go ahead and adapt our organizations? And what are people and leaders going ahead and calling out to us here at SHL? So as our world evolves, businesses and roles need to as well. And this was some of the stats that we went ahead and picked up. This from the Gartner report, 2020 HR Priorities Survey. New skills for existing roles, people are going ahead and calling out that 90% of the people are calling out adding in of new skills. 83% new roles organizations are saying are being created on an ongoing basis. 79% of existing roles are going ahead and disappearing. And over 44% of the organizations, close to half the organizations who were surveyed, called out that they're going through organization restructuring. And with COVID and the kind of points that we've been going and hearing, the impact is even more, because the avenues available to organization has also gone ahead and increased tenfold. So organizations who are leveraging the situation, are retooling for the new situation, are preparing themselves for the new situation, are definitely going to be able to move forward in a far superior fashion. Let me move forwards. Okay. The topic which is there for discussion today, it's definitely not an easy one. Mobilizing leaders is complex. And with the volume of change which is going on and happening, it has a lot of impact for businesses. And you do not have any immediate and long-term approaches to be able to go ahead and take it forwards. When you go ahead and look at the workforce, okay, you have questions like, hey, within my workforce, who are the leaders? Who has the leadership potential? And how do I go ahead and pick them up? When you go ahead and look at strategic alignment, who fits in where? Do they have the leadership skills? And do we know about them? And how will that apply in the future? Or when you look at it from a succession planning standpoint, who can backfill those critical leadership roles for you? But these are some of the questions which will keep coming back to us today, tomorrow, and also into the future. And how can we as organizations be able to look forward and be able to work towards it? Now, without data or the right insight, all of us, I'm sure, agree that mobility is going to be slow. It is going to be inaccurate and definitely very costly. Why? Because data is siloed. We are not getting the specific insight that we are getting, which we need to have. There's no aggregate view. There's no single use insight. There's manager bias which comes into the data. And when you look at the kind of report which goes in and comes in, that's the value which it starts providing to all of us, to be able to see what the market situation is, to be able to understand what the market situation is, and to be able to go ahead and operate around it. This is one of the key challenges which goes in and comes up of a wrong leadership mobility decision. Okay, 46% of the leaders fail to meet objectives in their new roles. 43% of CEOs say poor talent management keeps them from meeting their targets. And 40% of departing employees say a lack of development made them dissatisfied with their job. Each of these points which we're going ahead and calling out are going to go ahead and keep magnifying more and more with new challenges which go ahead and come across to us as organizations, which could be external or which could be internal. There was a comprehensive study, like I had gone ahead and mentioned out, where we had gone ahead and done a significant sample collection globally. We had about 11% coverage from India standpoint too, and it was across multiple industry types. And these were some of the insights and which I wanted to be able to go ahead and take across with you. The one core critical insight which came up was when we are going in looking for leaders and are wanting to identify successful leaders, the importance of context becomes extremely critical. As HR, one of the key areas which constantly takes on discussion is competencies. But what we came out with in the insights that we were able to gather from our research was the power of context and the importance of context. So there were over 300 contextual challenges which were identified. And out of those 300 contextual challenges which people called out, there were 27 which we identified as extraordinarily critical business contexts which leaders of today need to be able to review on. And every role within the organization would have some context coming in from a driving performance standpoint, or from leading change, or from managing risk and reputation, or a combination from delivering results. So every role, apart from the competencies that it requires to go ahead and be able to address, needs to have the experience of the context that that role needs to go ahead and address for. To give you a simple example on that, I want to go ahead and have a person who's able to go ahead and build a new market for me. The kind of contextual challenges which come up in terms of building a new market versus somebody going in and operating in a developed market get down to being very, very different. In a manufacturing organization, somebody may be interested more about ensuring cost control and efficiency where there are developed processes already in place, whereas somebody may be challenged with the problem of bringing in new innovation to stay on top of the market. So every organization has to be able to go ahead and identify for the role beyond the competencies, 6 to 7 challenges or context elements which would make a difference in terms of identifying the right leader for themselves. So this is the core point. So we start with competencies when we're identifying the high potentials within the organization, but to be able to align strategically and develop leaders, or to be able to do informed succession planning, the element of context becomes super critical. These are some of the benefits that you go ahead and get of being able to go ahead and use the power of context. We're 11x more likely to achieve executive positions, 12x more likely to be effective in senior roles, 2x more likely to stay, put in extra effort, and meet performance goals of the organization. And why it matters, if you have to look at just performance, you're looking at 43% of the high-fit candidates getting into being top performers, compared to 10% for low-fit. When it comes on to cultural diversity, or when we have to take on the area of cultivating or building diversity within the organization, 58% of the population were identified where critical leadership roles were being picked up by women. So the match which was coming on with women candidates being able to fit into those jobs was higher than men. Now, point to ponder. And over here, we go ahead and call out that it's difficult to find women, but if that in executive roles, but if you are able to go ahead and get women into those executive roles, the fit which you're going to go ahead and get in is going to be far superior. And definitely from an engagement standpoint, a high 82% is the number where high fit leaders have higher work engagement when you're able to go ahead and identify them with the power of context. So it becomes extremely, extremely critical for us as as leaders to be able to identify the benefits of the power and importance of context and to be able to lead forwards with that as we grow into our new journey, into the new world post-COVID. With that, I thank each of you for participating in this session today, and looking forward to the engaging future sessions which are going to go ahead and be taken forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dwivedi. And with that, we're now inviting Mr. Manish Singhal, DSP Picky, to deliver the concluding remark. Mr. Singhal?
Manish, you're on mute.
You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I just missed you towards the end, actually.
To conclude, word of thanks, please.
Okay. No, thanks. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So thanks for having me here, Ranjan, Dilip, of course, Madhvi, and a lot of our members from the HR committee which are there. I think the presentation which I saw was itself actually quite a insight into how human resource philosophy is actually changing, and probably the pandemic has already accelerated all those changes. The aspect of skills probably, yes, is relevant all across organizations, as skill building is something which is totally changing, in terms of both requirements for the organizations and requirements for the individuals itself. So I think this has been a good initiative by the team, Ritunjay, Mentee, and my FICCI Quality Forum team, which looks after the HR initiatives. Of course, we have FICCI's own HR team, which contributes towards all these inputs. So with these words, of course, thank you, Ranjan. Thank you, Dilip, for being here, and we look forward to carrying this agenda forward in a more meaningful way, also as part of our HR committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singhal, and requesting all our dignitaries to please stay back, and now inviting Ms. Madhvi Lal, Head HR Deutsche Bank, to join us for the moment that we've all gathered here for. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the unveiling of the CXO Moves Annual Report 2020-21. The CXO Moves Annual Report is an annual feature, a year-long study, like Mr. Bansal mentioned, of the numerous CXO movements that took place in financial year 2020-21. Capturing the various movements from more than 300 portals, this joint initiative by Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry and Sapphire Human Solutions is a visual representation of underlying trends of these numerous movements. This report will serve as a ready reference for organizations across industries in their CXO hiring process. With that said, I'm requesting all the dignitaries to please go ahead and unveil the physical copy of the report live on their screen, please. As the unveiling happens, being at home on our couches, in our offices, let's give it a huge round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Singhal. Sorry. Holding it wrong, is it? Sorry. Perfect, Ms. Lal. You may have to hold it a little of that. Perfect. Perfect. And once again, a huge round of applause. Thank you so much to all our dignitaries for their remarks. Insightful indeed. One thing I would like to mention, ladies and gentlemen, at the backstage, this is one of the few colloquiums that we've attended where all the speakers were so excited to share their insights, their knowledge, that while the session started at 10 a.m., the discussion began at 9:30 a.m. itself. So looking forward to it. All I can say is hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen, because you're going to witness something really insightful, something really fruitful, because our next session is something which you all would like to know and make a note of. With that said, once again, thank you so much, dignitaries, for your presence, for those remarks. And I would now like to invite Mr. Vijay Chandler, MD and CEO, ICICI Securities, to present the keynote address on why leadership hiring is important to any organization. But right before that, I would request everyone, the attendees, the viewers, I would urge you all to please keep in your questions, along with who would you want your question to be answered by on the Byte platform itself. I repeat, on the Byte platform itself, you may go ahead and key in all your questions. Please do not forget to mention who your question is directed to, and we would answer all your questions towards the end of the session, time permits. With that said, introducing Mr. Vijay Chandler, MD and CEO, ICICI Securities. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. I first want to check if I can be heard and seen.
Crystal clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today on this event. Really privileged and delighted to be here. I would have loved to come and see your faces and engage with you. Unfortunately, the times are such that that kind of a format is still not possible. I'm hoping that we'll get back to those days very soon. Really looking forward to that. I was listening to some of the sessions that were going on before this, and I was really enjoying some of the fantastic insights that I picked up. And I thought I would structure this discussion broadly in three parts. I thought, sitting as a head of a company, how the world is changing, right? How are we seeing the world changing? I want to spend a little time around it. How the business, as a result of that, the people as a result of that, behaviors as a result of that is changing, and what kind of implications that has got for leadership, for skills, for organizations, and the HR function. So broadly, this is the way I thought I'll structure this conversation. I heard one of the earlier speakers talk about the VUCA world, and I'm sure all of you have deeply familiar with this. As I'm thinking about this whole VUCA concept, I feel today the world is actually moving from a VUCA scenario to a ruptured scenario. And what exactly this ruptured scenario is, the world is not just VUCA, but it's actually getting ruptured. And what I mean by this ruptured is that it is very rapid. Nothing is stationary. Even the volatility is rapid. Even the uncertainties are changing with so much rapidity. And I try and explain it with some examples in the course. It is uncertain, for sure. It is paradoxical. It's not that it's all bad. It's not that it's all good. It's all mixed. And that's the real state of affairs. And that's the genuine way we are feeling and experiencing the world. And it is tangled. You just don't know which ball is going to come and hit you where, right? Things could look fantastic, and then suddenly it looked very bad, and then suddenly it will start looking good again. So it's all tangled. So it's a ruptured world. And it's moving into multi-speed zone. And what is really leading to this kind of a disruption? The disruptions are hitting in several different ways. So different companies are experiencing it differently. There is, broadly speaking, supply chain disruption. Some of the industries that you're working on, some of you might have experienced that. There is labor dislocation, of course, getting restored very, very rapidly now, almost restored completely. There is liquidity disruption. Many industries, companies are facing disruption and shortages of capital, credit flow, all of this. It's disruptions of different kinds. And depending on the industry that you are, depending on the sector that you are, disruption is hitting you in different ways. So on the one side, you have, let's say, if you're in a very high contact industry, like let's say a theater business or entertainment business, or for that matter, travel, tourism, those sectors have been very, very badly impacted, right? Certain industries, engineering, construction, impacted, but now we are seeing recovery and rapid recovery. On the other hand, there are some industries who are actually booming. Yes, there are some industries there which are actually booming, and I'm sure some of you would probably belong to that industry. One of that industries, fortunately, the industry that I come from, which is capital markets, equities and capital markets. So that's an industry which is really booming and it's actually going through massive growth. You see a lot of Indians joining capital markets, stock markets. Everyone wants to put their savings to, given the interest rate scenario, to better return purposes, and they're accessing markets. We are seeing a lot of companies access capital because of the uncertainty. So it is not just gloom and doom and all bad all over. There's also growth. In our industry, where most companies are seeing what one would call a capital shortage, demand shortage, labor shortage, dislocations on account of raw material, our business being a very digital business, being extremely, I would say, low capital needed business, has actually seen great times, and also demand has in a way expanded because of the reasons that I just expressed. Apart from this, we are also seeing that the consumer behavior is changing. We are all experiencing around us how we are engaging has changed, how we are celebrating events has changed, how we are consuming goods has changed. It's not just the young Indian who's going to digital methods of purchasing, evaluating, assessing, buying. It's also the more mature Indian who's going there, given the environment. And we are just finding that many things that we would never have thought would require a digital sort of a way of dealing, now requires a digital way of dealing. Therefore, digitization as a concept and as an agenda is taking center stage, and it has got implications in way people, where people do their work, how people do their work, and what exactly do they do. And therefore, there are significant implications for people, for organizations, for leaders. When we look at the people around us, the people who are working with us, we find that there is enormous amount of pain that people have experienced, enormous amount of stress people have experienced. This is due to various reasons. All of us have gone through a combination of, to begin with, uncertainty, whether we are going to have the job, not have the job, whether things are going to continue, what could happen, medical issues that could crop up, long hours that all of us have been probably putting in. Working from home is actually damp up financial distresses in certain households, certain families, medical difficulties, even just to simply access. All of this is in a way impacting what one would call mental well-being. In such a context, I think if we are what we are today, a lot of it has to be attributed to the enormous resilience that all of us have collectively demonstrated. I think more the people who are impacted by this, the resilience that they have demonstrated than anything other than that is what we should really commend. Tremendous resilience has come in, and organizations and leadership really have a responsibility to try and play a facilitating role in kind of restoring and restituting and repairing this kind of a thing. And I find that a leadership today needs to think in a multimodal way in terms of time frame. It's not just about thinking short term. for instance, I recollect when we got into this situation recently, we had to think of what's going to happen the first 15-20 days of the beginning of the lockdown to something that we need to do in a more 3 to 5 to 6 month horizon to something that we need to do in a slightly longer horizon, which could be, let's say, beyond 8-9 months to, let's say, the next couple of years, given the change environment that is emerging. And it is a leadership which needs to galvanize this. You need to have the necessary skills to be able to work in a multimodal fashion and a very near term managing issues, a more medium term in post the crisis situations getting normalized, and then a more medium term where you're actually trying to build businesses, because you have to handle at the end of the day as a leader all expectations beyond just the people expectations that are there in the market. It's the investor expectation, it is the constituents that you're dealing with, their expectations, and these pressures can be really daunting and enormous at the leadership level. I think in such a context, some of the things that become critical, organizations and leaders have to demonstrate, and I believe that these skills, these capabilities, these qualities are very important in leaders. Empathy becomes more important. It's always been important, but I think in current context and the context that is emerging, empathy, sensitivity, the ability to reach out to people, communicate and over communicate. I think that's very, very important, particularly in the context that we are all in. From an organizational viewpoint, it's important for us to think of policies which are more flexible. I think we've always been very used to a very rigid way of having a policy and adhering to those constituents of those policies. I think flexibility of policy is very critical. It's not just about providing medical attention in terms of financial resourcing, but I think we have to, in such context, go beyond that. And I think all of the large organizations have done a lot of things which are quite out of the box and facilitative towards employees. For the mental well-being, looking at things like counseling services, professional counseling services is something that many organizations have done. And this is something that will probably need to keep continuing as a capability available to offer to employees from time to time. In such context, we also had to think about, how we are recognizing employees, because work has to go on. How do you reward, recognize? How do you promote people? 1 year has gone, more than a year has gone, maybe a couple of years more will go before things become truly normal. We have taken a more magnanimous view at the lower levels, slightly more stringent views in the middle levels, and extremely stringent view at the senior levels. So at the senior levels, we actually took pay cuts, and we went ahead and gave pay hikes actually at the junior levels in a context like this. I think leadership will have to take ownership of ensuring that, in difficult times like this, there is proper well-being maintained, financial well-being is also maintained, sanity is being maintained across organization levels. When it comes to hiring and new hiring, again, many organizations have a situation where you pre-commit, for example, in an organization like ours, you would have gone and pre-committed to MBA institutions, engineering institutions, a number of people, and then you have this COVID and there is uncertainty of business. So how do you deal with that? I think things like that become very important as to what is the kind of messaging and signaling that you do. We ensured as an organization, I'm sure many organizations have done the same, taken all the commitments made to these institutions, the young employees who have joined us, getting them on board and getting them into the organization in a digital format, getting them inducted into this. On the hiring side, talking about these new employees hiring, we feel that a lot has changed, and yet a lot of things are still similar to what they were. For instance, one of the things that we realize is very important as we are hiring new people is the importance of using multiple modes of hiring. It's not just about personal interviews, which we've been doing in the earlier format, but it is invariably mixing it up with at least 3 or 4 formats of assessments, all of course conducted digitally, electronically, and combining all of this, which includes digitally conducted assessment centers, which includes certain kinds of psychographic testings that need to be incorporated along with the interviews, because it's all of you have been doing all of this in the past, but the importance of using this, to my mind, becomes all the more relevant in today's context. As we think about hiring leadership in the current context, what we really see is that some of the things that need to be put into a forefront as you're picking up leaders, as you're nurturing leaders, is ability of the leader to conceptualize, how he's able to imagine solutions which are out of the box, how he's able to set an agenda and execute in the context that we are all in. This becomes very, very critical. Ability to work with teams, always an important factor, takes more criticality in the current context. Change management. I think almost every organization is forced to go through this change, to handle people in the context as change is going, and enable them to transform into the new emerging tomorrow. Change management and their ability to handle change, their agility. A lot of what we are doing, we are not sure, right? We venture out, we test it out, we realize that there's a mistake. We need to have that ability to cut losses, pull back, and change tracks. A leader will need to demonstrate agility, dealing with ambiguity and dealing with ambiguity with equanimity. Again, this is very, very important in the current context, because nobody is able to predict beyond a certain point in time as to what's going to happen, how things are going to play out. Even today, as we look forward, while there is a feeling of positivity, there is also a feeling of uncertainty, whether that positivity is going to really play out. Most important in today's context, for people to unlearn and have the ability to relearn. Lots and lots of job, because of the changes that are taking place, are becoming so redundant, and therefore unlearning, relearning, these are things that are critical from people point of view, from leadership point of view. Also, I would think the ability of a leader to listen and to change himself as a person, as a person, use that capability to continuously look at reskilling himself. So, at least at the leadership level, I think these things are extremely critical for him to be aware of, from not just a cognitive sense, but also from a behavioral sense, and demonstrate these and try and instill some of these qualities within the team, and handle issues as which come up in the team as a consequence of emerging changes in environment that's in front of us. Further, to conclude, I would conclude my session with 3-4 points that I believe could be challenges and points for the leadership team to ponder about as we move forward. The first point to my mind, as we think about times forward, is how, in the current context and the emerging context, should the HR unit of the company instill the culture of the organization while you are working in a multimodal format. There is part remote, maybe today, part in office, and this kind of a format is probably going to continue. There's continuing business, there's continuing hiring that is taking place, and we still have to instill and maintain a kind of a cohesive culture around it. How do we do this? How do we handle mentor and mentee relationship when you're not really there in a fully physical formatted kind of a model that we are used to? Then there is this issue of burnout, overwork that people are getting subjected to. And again, I think it's important for HR to recognize and frame an approach towards dealing with matters of this nature, because these are serious issues for people. In a remote model, you have people reaching out to customers. How do you ensure that the same kind of discipline, the same kind of productivity, the same kind of etiquette is kind of maintained when you're engaging with external stakeholders while you're in a remote format, as compared to how it would have been in a normal format. And finally, one of the things that we have to contend with in our industry, and I'm sure it is relevant in other industries as well, is how does, in a remote format, an organization morph itself from being merely a siloed organization to becoming a kind of a cross-functional, create cross-functional capabilities and squads, which are multi-functional squads, because today we require multifunctional squads to deliver results in the marketplace. And doing that in a remote format, while you're breaking down an old structure which you've been so used to in the past, is a real issue that many organizations, and certainly we, are facing and trying to overcome. So I think these are some of the challenges. I'm not even sure whether we have answers to all these questions. But certainly these are areas that leadership team, the HR unit of companies will need to grapple with as they think forward. I'm going to conclude here. Thank you so much for having me here. I'll hand the session back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chandler. Indeed, that was profound and such an insightful session. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's no news, right? I mean, that past year has been full of challenges. Even Mr. Chandok mentioned it. It's been so challenging, where it's been a year full of learning, and more than anything, it's been a year where businesses and leaders have only evolved, right? As leaders, it is important for all of us to pay a lot of attention to this session. Yes, you got it right. As leaders have evolved, ladies and gentlemen, so does their priorities. Our next session is a panel discussion on assessing the evolution of the leadership priorities in the VUCA world. I would now like to introduce our distinguished panelists, Anadi Ensign, Group President, Numinda Group, Ms. Rashmi Mancharamani, CHRO, The Wave Group, Mr. Manoj Sharma, CHRO, Aarti Industries, Ms. Renu Bohra, CHRO, DB Shankar, Ms. Shishma Kumar, Professional Services Delivery Director, SHL. I would now invite and introduce our moderator of this discussion, Mr. Ashish Anand, CHRO, SAR Group of Companies, to begin the discussion. As we proceed with our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, I would urge all of you all to please go ahead, key in your questions on the Byte platform. And towards the end of the session, we would try to answer all your questions. Over to you, Mr. Anand.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone, to all the co-panelists here and all the audiences. And thanks a lot to FICCI, SHL, Sapphire for organizing this and putting us together to have a meaningful session around here. So as we know, the topic, as we understand the topic of the next 1 hour, what we will be discussing about with our 5 esteemed panelists, Anadi, Rashmi, Manoj, Renu, Sushma, all of them are the veteran in their own the professional life, contributed immensely in the organization and the society. Look, at the end of the day, if we just look back last 1.5 years, the way the pandemic and the world was going at a very steady pace, and suddenly in March of last year, we were struck with COVID and the national lockdown, and that imposed several challenges on the business, on the humanity, and livelihood everywhere. Now, pandemic did transform many ways we actually live, and that got also translated into the pandemic. How did it transform the businesses are done, the way the organizations were transformed? If you look at, there's one, and there have been several, in my view, there have been several crises in the world which we have overcome. The last one was in 1984 in US. The last pandemic happened in Spanish flu, which was 1918. Now, this was the first time, if you look at, around 5 billion of the total world population was almost at a standstill. 70-80% of the world was standstill, and everybody was a level playing field. So that posed a certain challenges which allowed us to think very differently, which allowed us to behave very differently. Now, taking the cue from there and the way we responded and the way the world is changing at this point in time, I would go back. I would just go to Rashmi, who is the CHRO for the Wave Group. Rashmi, in your experience, what did you experience the organization expectations from from its leaders when the pandemic suddenly came on our face? Because suddenly everything changed from an office to virtual, from everybody's meeting every day, the whole business, the customer demand, the business cycle, everything got changed suddenly. How did you all respond in that scenario? I mean, we would love to hear your point of view.
Thank you, Ashish, and what a lovely opening. And I'm so happy to see you all here and giving me an opportunity to say my story. And I'd love to hear from all the other leaders, because I will share my perspective, what I saw, the evolution of the leader, a small way, how it started in brief. So Ashish, and to everybody here, throughout this period, we have been actually struggling. We've seen a lot of shifts that have been occurred, and the leadership style changed each time, because of the needs of the workforce and workplace. Yeah. So all of us faced incredible performance pressures during this turbulent time. Huh? Why? Because there was a disconnected workforce. There was social isolation, personal priorities, family health issues, and all of that added to the business, complexity. So looking back, actually, if you see, you always have a model or a prototype that you can follow. But here, what was the major concern was that no organization during this time, no leader could have any valid reference point from where the past could relate to. There was nothing we could look back and say, oh, let me follow this. So what was happening to the leaders was that what we were doing, what our organization was doing, that, we would bootstrap, would gain experiences, we see the success, failures, learn from it, reinvent, and others would also learn. So it was actually the whole period has been a period of reinvention, and we're going on. Hopefully we should, the third wave doesn't come and we don't have to reinvent ourselves so much. So coming to your question, that was the background, right? So coming to your question that what do organizations expect from the leaders? What did we do as an organization? So as a leader, whenever there is a crisis, what we do is that we always adopt a command and control style. So when the first pandemic happened, the first wave, happened, all the leaders, we all of us took a control situation. So what we did was, what was very important to us at that time, the first thing we saw was business continuity. How do I continue my business? How do I reach out to my customer? So we all, practically we all business heads, we all formed with our groups, with the head of departments, we formed WhatsApp groups, we clocked in, we had Zoom calls, we would discuss the things to do and the progress, the targets. And then gradually we heard all around us about furloughs and layoffs and pay cuts. And we all had to do a little bit of everything. Then gradually we heard of all these mental wellness health programs in abundance and all that we had never heard before. So actually started strategy, it started taking a backseat. And what we did in our organization, I think all organizations have done, we formed a COVID helpline team, to reach out to COVID patients. And then by the second wave time, we were more than distributing targets and data, we were distributing concentrators, oxygen, medicine, ambulance, hospital beds. So what was apparent was that, it became a more or less people-centric objectives were at the center. And the business-centric objectives were little given us, it took a sidestep, and as the second wave became acute. So there was a sort of a evolution of a leader in a people-centric way. Now, coming to where we are now, and since the first wave, when we had started work from home and hybrid models, which I think are here to stay, the first most expectation from any organization was that the leader should be able to clearly communicate, communicate to the people who were all over the place. Because ambiguity was overwhelming, in the minds of employees, because they were all over the place, they were disconnected, they were not interacting together. So communication that was transparent, empathic, and continuous was very important. And this is what all our leaders, then all of us did, connected with the employees. And what we saw in our organization, I think it's in most organizations, we saw that our leaders, they displayed a lot of, deliberate calm and bounded optimism when they spoke to people, So it was a sort of a leadership that was very authentic and situational. And what was the key foundation of the whole thing? Was trust. Trust is very important in every relationship, and especially in a employee-employer relationship when you're not in touch with each other. So in this crisis, so finally we went one step ahead, that in this crisis, we saw the emergence of a leader who learned to embrace humanity as a way of maintaining connection, and momentum and focus instead of strategy, data, MIS dashboards. So what have we, so actually, it's an irony that the pandemic has taught us several lessons, and did we actually have to wait for that? But the most important thing, how the leadership has evolved is, it has given us a human-centered approach, instead of a totally business one, how it puts people at the center of the business model, the well-being of the people, the professional and personal lives, And when you have such a culture, that is grounded in strong values and inspiring and enlightening, then you produce extraordinary business results. This is what we have seen. So to sum it up, that you do need leaders, who are agile, who adopt new age technologies, and who restructure, realign the workforce. They identify new revenue streams. They focus on business and embrace automation, which is a must today, business transformation, calibrating strategy. All that is very important because the customer's needs change, customers' expectations change. But who's the ideal leader of today? For our organization, I think for most organizations, above all this is a leader, a leader who's empathetic, who collaborates, who empowers and promotes psychological safety. A leader who is, we've seen such leaders, a leader who is future fluent. Who is future fluent? A future fluent person who embraces continuous innovation. And there's a formula for future fluent, before I conclude, is, if you have agility plus resilience plus perspective, you're future fluent. So this is my story of an evolution of a leader, and I hope it has been interesting for all of you all.
Thanks, Rashmi. It was very insightful. Couple of key points, and I think I also concur with certain key points, is that there was no playbook which was available, which means all the billions of dollars companies have spent on their BCP by the various large consulting firms were actually of no use. So one had to create a BCP on the fly, and I think everyone did in that sense. And one other interesting take, which I also feel, and I concur with you, is that the well-being of the human being or the well-being of the employees, which is always on a subconscious part, became a conscious part. And I think that's a fundamental change which happened in the minds of the leader in the organization. Because as I said, there's a 5 billion population standstill, which means everybody's life was at risk, whether you're rich or poor. So I think that's life itself is a leveling ground in that sense. So much, Rashmi. And I go to now Sushma. Sushma, what would be interesting to hear from you, and it's very close to the line of work which you guys do also. in the VUCA world, what are the direct challenges or the hurdles a leadership faces in maintaining the stability of business? And because the business is very volatile, the business cycles have become shorter. The age of the organization itself has become much shorter. The companies which used to last 30 years, now they last for 7 years, 10 years, they merge, extinct or whatever happens to them. So how do you see from your perspective or experience?
Thanks, Ashish. And, before I share all that we've learned in this time and all that we've been able to see, I just wanted to say, Rashmi, very well captured lifeline of the last 2 years. I could certainly see myself in parts of your story as well, where from being able to see if people had the internet connection and the laptops to really kind of helping out in their personal lives, because it was so important to see the full person and not just the person at work. So thank you for sharing that story. Ashish, coming to your point, when you, as you rightly said, the playbook that organizations created, none of them had a plan for VUCA. So, strategy in the context of VUCA didn't exist. There was a strategy, and then there was a perhaps plan A or plan B to that. The world at large has been talking about VUCA for a decade, and the last 2 years have seen VUCA on steroids. Our research has clearly seen and suggested that many roles, not just at the ground level, but even at leadership levels, won't exist in the next 10 years. 44% of the organizations are saying that they're willing to be acquired or they're going to acquire, which means there will be an absolute threadbare talent war, right? Who stays, who goes. So it's becoming extremely important for leadership, to Rashmi's point, be future fluent. We almost see that 75% of the board folks say that they do not feel that they have enough of a bench of high potentials or successors in their pipe so that they can succeed. And who knows what's the formula of that success going to be in the near future. What we're seeing, and from the research that we've done with Gartner in 2018, is that there's, and the question at that point in time that we were trying to get an answer for is, what is that X factor that determines a great leader? Because that X factor will determine the success of the business that the leader is leading. And the one answer that we have been able to get is that context plays a very, very critical part in the success of a leader. The Midas touch is when you have found the right context, to which you have found the right experience, and you have also found a right set of preferences in that person to meet the challenges in that ecosystem. So when context, experience, and preferences come together, you're more likely to succeed in your role as compared to just hiring because the person has a legacy of working in the organization, or there is no success pipeline, or talent outside is expensive or unavailable. And typically, each and every leader today, give or take, if you take a leader persona, business or corporate or any kind of enablement or support functions, there are 7, 8 very typical challenges that all leaders are facing. How do I lead and how do I grow geographically dispersed teams? Because no one's going to be in office anymore. For me, geographically dispersed teams are also teams that are in my city, but now sitting in different offices. How do I transform either a low collaboration or a high conflict culture? We're in a place where we are not sure whether, if an M&A is taking place virtually, the cultures will match. We may be running siloed organizations. So how do we cut through that? Delivering in high resource constraints. Organizations through COVID's lens are going to get very, very, they're going to want to optimize on cost and automate, which means in the short to near to maybe in long term, we may be working with far less resources than we need or want right now. And I think lastly, everything is changing pretty much by the next day. You open the paper today, there is a startup launched. You open the paper tomorrow, an existing giant has crafted their product. So a lot of changing product, changing processes, changing market demands. If you think about all of these aspects, And if you then think about a leader who is from the context, has the experiences, and then has a preference to solve for those challenges, a combination of someone like that would be far more effective in their role and will help sustain the business. And that's the work we've been doing with organizations where we're trying to help him. It's almost like you're assembling a cricket team, but you're deciding who's the right person to play a test cricket and who's the right person to play an IPL. But if you have your team on IPL, what changes in the success of that team is the pitch that they will play in, whether they're playing in the Australia pitch or whether they're playing on the Wankhede pitch. So a lot of that thinking really needs to come in when you're thinking about context-based leadership as you think about business sustenance.
Thanks so much. I think you made Sushma, you made some very pertinent point about the VUCA. World is still figuring out how to deal with VUCA. I think the VUCA will deal with VUCA world will deal with itself once oldies like us actually pass out from the from the generation. So another interesting point which I think was is the context of how organizations work in the context, experience, and preference. I think it's a great point to look at. Thanks a lot, Sushma. We'll come back to you again. And Manoj, I come back to you with your vast experience. I mean, you were the CHRO for the Aarti Industries. I mean, this is a topic which I think has been most talked about, and I think tons and tons of research papers, webinars, and we've been bombarded with webinars and the discussions around that. That's a very interesting topic. What has been your valuable leadership lessons you would have seen during the pandemic? Because that's what everyone is trying to figure out, and I don't think so. There is a clear rule book or any research paper which is available right now. So over to you, Manoj. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Ashish. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah. Yes.
First of all, I think I must compliment Sushma and Rashmi to really provide the context, and it makes my task really easy. And so coming back to the question, I'd like to place it for all of you from the context of having worked for so long in the manufacturing space, and having seen all sorts of the ground realities from the point of view of really managing people in the space wherein all aspects of challenges are seen very, very closely. So one big realization was in a manufacturing space, resistance to change is very high. And one important realization, but I notice is acceptance of new normal, working through a remote model, and maybe, accepting the digital as a medium to work was really, well adopted, I would say that. And people really, embrace that change. So shown a lot of resilience to adopt that change. That is one. But parallelly to this, how this has happened, I think I like to place a story of our company, Aarti Industries. It is not something I would say it is emerged out of 1.5 years of pandemic. I think the work which you do in a normal situation as well is very, very important to keep into your, consideration when you are really, dealing with a situation like pandemic or any such, challenges kind of a scene. So what I noticed, the work we were doing, like 2019, I did a leadership assessment of more than around 100 leaders in the company. And some of the success profiles which were created were very future oriented in nature in terms of the leadership traits or the competencies, which involves, things like courage, resilience, and decision quality. From the leadership traits points like tolerance to ambiguity, risk-taking, adoption, and openness to differences, empathetic, and being approachable, those kind of things. I realized, when we saw that assessment early in 2019, it gave us a lot of assurance, what kind of people we have in the company, and when any challenges will pose on to them with respect to company growth or with respect to greenfield or brownfield project or with respect to business continuity, as we deal with a lot of hazardous chemicals and pharma space, it is very essential for our people to be really ready for any challenges. And to my, really pleasant surprise, people have really shown that character in terms of demonstrating those traits when it needed more actually. So as a result, it helped us into really transiting into the pandemic and managing the pandemic extremely efficiently. I would say that, the good things which we did, our people were in continuous communication, and some of the success story which Rashmi shared, I think most of us was, felt by our people as well in terms of round the clock COVID support and etc. But most important aspect I like to place here, we played on our strength in terms of care is our important value. I think the way the care was demonstrated, so completely value-centric approach all across. And I'm sure most of the corporates have, really figured it out to what can work for them. And that is something, we figured it out, like sticking to our values and operating from that as a source really was helpful. And as a result, very early in our, March 2020, I remember, I issued a communication. Nobody would lose a job on account of pandemic in the industries. And that really helped in terms of eliminating complete fear and threats from the minds of the people. So that was a big, I would say, a step towards, managing this pandemic efficiently and effectively. So when that threat was eliminated, the task became easy for us. So in terms of, we provided that psychological safety, we provided, a kind of, a hope in people to really cope up with this challenge. Another important aspect which happened, there is lot has been written on leadership, and there has lot been, available in the books and in the research, on leadership. There is a beautiful concept of micro leadership, and micro leadership, is all about service. And I must say, being a HR leader, our HR teams have demonstrated that micro leadership to its fullest and is still continuing. I touch upon certain, ingredients of that micro leadership. Micro leadership is all about living in the gaps. And the HR team, admin team, safety team, security team, occupational health team, they lived in those gaps and provided support to the people. They lived to serve. Their whole motto was live to serve people. And they did a fantastic job with respect to that. They were the connectors amongst the people and the family and the community we were operating. They extended their hand in a manner. They offered their hand to support people round the clock. They became a cause in the matter. Now that was extremely powerful. When interacted with a person who is just maybe an associate or an officer making his or her career, was a cause in the matter for small things that got addressed so powerfully. So people did not really, get rattled for, getting those small things sorted for them. And lastly, it's, that helped in terms of establishing a sense of ownership and a hierarchy-free environment. Now, when I say hierarchy-free, I think pandemic has taught us being hierarchy-free can really bring transition and transformation in a big manner. And that could be a good leadership and big leadership trait when we are looking to induct new leader or we are investing in any leader to be a future leader. That aspect really, it's a big learning, how we can make our people hierarchy-free. Or some people call it, hierarchy agnostic as well. But in our parlance, we are actually, talking on this word of being hierarchy free, so that everybody is, operate with that freedom. During this, journey, an interesting model has been developed by us. We call it Aarti Engaging Leader. Aarti Engaging Leader is one who operates with Aarti values of care, integrity, and excellence, who operates in a natural state of action. And everybody is Aarti Engaging Leader the way it is positioned, who works in alignment, speaks and listens powerfully, is a cause in the matter, and co-creates a world-class company. It's absolutely in a very practical manner, Ashish. It has been, kind of a bottoms-up approach, and it is like now being felt and seen and practiced and demonstrated by everyone in the company. That is, and that pandemic was a big event in the lives of the people, but being an Aarti Engaging Leader, everything was possible for them to overcome. So it taught us a lot of empathy. It taught us a lot of leadership maturity. It really brought everyone so close to our purpose. People started relating their jobs with a purpose, relating how important their job with the overall purpose of the company, overall vision of the company. I tell you, we did an engagement study with the support of Gallup in December 2020. We got a phenomenal scores on engagement indicators. Phenomenal score, like top of the world. That level, and that was so I would say encouraging for our work actually, which our leaders are doing. So I must say that the way the whole HR or the people power has demonstrated, has come out, and if they are guided properly by our people, if they are being in communication, if they are not operating with a hierarchy, rather operating as a connector or a be a cause in the matter, I think it has worked powerfully. Lastly, I must say, I think it has personally taught me a great lesson. I have given my declaration in my company. I am a medium and an enabler for them to realize their vision, and I am a listener. Rather than being called myself as a CHRO, I'm actually planning to drop that title. I am a listener. I am a medium and an enabler for our people to realize their vision. So that is the the lessons I would say. It has been so touchy for me and very powerful for our people. I think a lot of collective wisdom is being in operation rather than individual excellence. And that collective power, again, there are powerful literature on this collective wisdom. And that collective wisdom is leveraged to a fullest, I would say, during this time. And as a result, I feel really, very happy to share that we could manage this phase for us. We were an essential, commodities, company. So we got all our responsibility in terms of providing specialty chemicals and APIs for pharma space during that time when the country really needed it. And I did not face the issue of absenteeism and burnout. And if there was any issue with respect to, any fear or threats with respect to, the health of the people, we have gone out of the way to support them. Even the extended family, even the, the vaccination for me is complete for everyone. 20,000 vaccination, we took it as a mission. And our people and corporate affairs team, HR team, admin team, everybody worked as a mission, as if we are on a war. So I think this whole aspect has taught us a lot of lessons, and it has really beautiful is presented by Rashmi as well. It has brought people together, and that real people power is seen at the workplace. And a lot of work has moved for the business point of view. We have announced new expansion, company growth. Our projects are getting commissioned. So really, when there was a transition from Gujarat to UP, because most of the workforce at the blue collar level is from UP and Bihar, we could manage that transition so well by providing the basic amenities round the clock to those people, so that they remain, committed to their work and feel safe about it. And all that is possible with the support of the leaders and their uncluttered mind towards this. So I think I'm a little charged while sharing this, but this is what I experienced, and I'm happy, this question is asked to me, Ashish, by you, and I could share my perspective. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Manoj. I think it was lovely and a great insight. And I'll just summarize a few points for audiences for us. We'll reflect if time is left at towards the end. I think so. I quite resonate with some of the things which you spoke about, accepting digital as a change. And I also wear a hat of an IT head for the group, along with my HR hat. So what we could not do for years in the digital change, pandemic did it on the fly in 3 weeks' time. So I think that acceptance, the whole collective wisdom, the care. I think it's a great example. So thank you very much, and kudos to you. You could drive in your company, and I like the title thing that at times the HR guys are also fascinated by the titles and things like that. So it's a great learning for me as well. Is that how do you become a listening post rather than a competing guy in the organization? Thank you very much. And I would now go to Anadi, sir. Anadi, you have a vast experience across a lot of organizations. From what did you experience during this period? That how was the employee engagement motivation evolved during this period? I think it's still evolving. I mean, we haven't figured out what it is. Maybe next 3 years, once the pandemic is over, it will take few years for us to realize, or research papers to come out. But what do you think about this whole employee engagement motivation? It's evolving. How people have taken this in their stride. Over to you, sir.
Ashish, thank you very much. And it was nice deliberation from Manoj ji, a very senior and very seasoned HR professional, Sushma and Rashmi. And they have covered most of the aspects which calendars need to connect. But one thing was very clear. Everything came as a surprise. The first lockdown, standstill, everything is standstill. Nobody knows what to do. It was in real sense unprecedented. We never realized, we faced the curfews, we faced the riots, we faced the strike, but we never faced the countrywide lockdown. And in our case, the value chain, supply value chain is very, very unique. You have a plant in one part of the country, and you have to cater rest of the factories. And many factories in many states are operating, and many factories in many states are non-operative, and you have to cater because you miss, then the complete value chain is disrupted. We lost 3-4 months during the lockdown, and June we started gearing up for the restarting. And it was a challenge. We never had such a long shutdown or lockdown in our past. So restarting the complete plant has a safety challenge. It has another restarting challenge and manpower challenge. What we did from the day one, Ashish and other distinguished panelists, we become more communicative. We become more flexible. We become more nimble. We become more agile. Our decision making become very quick and immediate. We had extremely good connect with all 26,000 people across the globe. We had 3 times communication with all the plant head and HR heads across the globe, and taking a call shots immediately because everything was new. We never faced such situation. We never faced such. Ashish, the first challenge was that 100 of our people got stranded away from their families. The lockdown came as a surprise, and those who were on the official tour, the project assignment, they got stuck there. Their families at the different location. You imagine the situation, the husband or spouse is away and the family with the kids are 1,000 miles away and they don't know what to do. Supporting them. We never realized we will work as a courier agency The HR team will work as a courier agency to cater all the needs of the families in need. You asked, every HR person was a courier in my organization. He was catering to the food, he was catering to the essentials, he or she was catering to the medical needs. The first phase, we had to be very cautious about the medical related, and it was not very devastating. But second phase, yes. I remember the days, morning first call till last call, it was a nightmare. How to manage the situation where both the parents are no more. How to face the kids where there's nobody to look after them. We changed our policies. We were very focused and process oriented and rigid as a manufacturing organization. You have to be rigid in the manufacturing organization because people are required as shop floor. We went to the AI and ML based solutions to maintain the social distancing. We implemented all the protocols so that nothing is going wrong. But second phase, in spite of using all the protocols, something or other happened every day and every night. We changed our policies to care our people, even the deceased people. We changed our leave rules to take care of everybody who was absent because of the COVID for him or in his family or the spouse family, because we consider the spouse family also the family for the employee. We become a very fast decision maker and delegated everything. There was nothing to go to the top management. We at the HR teams, HR Fox and plants, take the case-to-case basis calls and decide. There was nothing to look, ye precedence ban jayega, this will become a precedence and in future we will have a problem. Like we normally used to talk in the normal days, we should not create precedence that will become a problem for future. So we made a lot of precedences and there was hundreds and thousands of activities and the initiatives we took that and the Ashish, there was one thing. The first communication came from the board on all the CEOs, ED and CHROs, and we evolved the team, MS team. All employees were connected through MS team. We purchased the license for everybody, more than the double of the required license we purchased, so that the connectivity won't be an issue. Everything went on digital, and the first town hall for the all employees, with the assurance that there will not be any job loss because of the COVID. There will not be any salary loss because of the COVID. Or the senior management level, we had some salary cuts for some months, but that was reversed in due course of time. But the blue collar level and the junior level, there was no salary cut, not a single job loss whatsoever will be the situation we decided. All put together, we came to the situation that the 4 months loss of production, 4 months loss of business, but we closed the year on 31st March 2021 with the positive figures. There was nothing which was comparable YOY negative. Everything became positive because people were charged. They were very sure that they have to recover and recoup the losses which they have encountered during the lockdown period. Those were the things, Ashish, we did, keeping the people engaged and involved. And even today, all the policies which are attuned to the work from home, attuned to the flexible work hours, attuned to the employee care, attuned to the mental health and well-being, a lot of medical arrangement we did during second phase that continue for the rest of the life, which earlier we never used to do. We never had to be a central tie-up and a different tie-up with a different healthcare organization and well-being organization. Now it is a long-term association with everybody. We had hundreds and hundreds of concentrators for our employees across. We opened during phase wave 2, we opened a COVID care center for all the locations where we were present for hundreds and hundreds of employees. And the one thing, all the expenses incurred by the employee for his family or his spouse family was taken care by the company without asking any question, without asking why you have incurred so much. All the hospitalization expenses for the COVID hospitalization was taken care by the company for all the employees. so that there is no fear, no loss of earning, no loss of financial insecurity, which make them disengage should have been. Then finally, we came up with the COVID deceased policy, where the family member is eligible for a job in the organization. All the kids are allowed to take their graduation in any field from the company expenses. All the expenses will be borne by the company for those who have lost their parents or the earning member in the organization. And then up to graduation, all the expenses, everything will be sponsored by company. Then there was a continuity salary paid for some fixed period of time, so that the family should not feel immediate loss of the earning member. So these were the things, Ashish, we did for the keeping the people engaged, motivated, and continue to contribute in the organization.
Thank you, sir. I think it was very incisive to know what you guys did in Uno Minda. But what one thing which I think one common theme which I am hearing, and we heard from Manoj as well, is that there's an assurance of no job loss, that creating a psychological safety net creates so much of bonding and belongingness to the organization, because at the time of crisis, if you stand by someone and you stand together, you go a long way in building that bond. I think that's great point, sir. And buying concentrators, dispatching them wasn't easy at point in time. We did it
even
ourselves.
globally. I think our global locations also we procured in India and dispatched and shipped them to the global location, so that they don't feel that they are not part of the mainstream. And one thing was more, Ashish, which I missed, the communication. Every of us was assigned to talk to at least 30 people in a day. And we have dedicated members allotted to all the white-collar people and the supervisory staff, so that all 26,000 people are connected at every day, and every day their well-being and their need and requirement was captured. We distributed for 26,000 people more than 2 lakh meals during the wave one, and even their transportation to if this migrant labor wanted to go back to their homes, we realized that if we ask them to stay back, this will demotivate, and in future there will be a detracted manpower. So we organize their buses, etc., also to go back to a native place, and whenever we call you, make sure that you come back. And all the duration during this period was paid to them.
I think that's a great example. I mean, because psychologically they were not feeling safe. Yeah. Though they would have been safer in the place where they're working, but the thousands and lakhs of the people migrated to Bihar and UP. And I think that's a great gesture.
And even Ashish, when they came back, the gestation period and the COVID restriction protocol period, everything was paid. We never deducted a single penny that, okay, you have not worked for after returning 2 weeks or 21 days, so you will not be paid. No, nothing. Everything was paid.
I think on a lighter note, I think the Uno Minda was actually Sonu Sood of corporate, which helped people to go back to UP and Bihar. So I think that deserves a special round of applause, because a lot of people didn't even think people traveling thousands of kilometers on cycle or in a very poor condition. So thank you very much, sir. I think it was very.
And one more thing, Ashish, we realized the role of local government and connectivity with the local government, which was not much for our industry like us, because we were B2B industry and we never realized. But it had become a very important, and we increased our interaction, contribution to the local government and the local society. Suddenly it increased multifold.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. It was great to know these the points. I think, I mean, key takeaway for us was helping people migrate to their hometown, the kind of communication which you all did. Safety net, psychological safety, that no job loss during this. I think great points, sir. I'm buying concentrators. We also bought hundreds of concentrators. It was hard to get one to buy hundreds. Yeah. It took.
And everybody, Ashish, was asking for
it took lifetime of an effort to we also had to make the advance payment because there was no other choice at that point. So I think we are short of time now. And Renu, I'll come to you. I was saving the best for the last, and the very interesting topic, which what we could think of. We keep hearing of democratization of content, democratization of money, democratization of financial institution on a fintech platform, or a edtech education is being done on edtech. Now, what's your view on democratization of leadership in such a crisis? I know it's a bit of a tricky question, but would love to hear your view, Renu, and then maybe if time permits, we'll have a one quick round, half a minute, quick fire on one topic. Over to you, Renu.
Thank you, Ashish. Thanks for the question. And it's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks to the organizer and Fiki, Sapphire and Fiki, and SHL for this session and calling us. It has been like a journey relived when Rashmi, Sushma, Anadi, and Manoj shared their views and their, I would say, radical, work that they have done in the organization. So coming to this question, how to democratize leadership in crisis. Now, let's go back. What is a democratic institution? One which is participative, one in which there is involvement. Like Panchayat Raj, where the decision making, the governance goes to the grassroots level, the third level. In organizations, leadership is democratic in many organizations, and it is believed to be one of the best organizations where we have participative leadership, where we have leadership at all levels, and where people don't look towards the CEO for each and every decision. But I would say that leadership will not become participative. Suddenly in a crisis, there is no culture in the organization of participative leadership. Suddenly overnight in time of crisis, if you think that you need to have a participative leadership, then you will rather go wrong. So participative leadership or democratizing leadership for crisis, I think we have to go 2 steps back. One is to have those kind of culture in the organization, and B, having a thorough crisis preparation. Now you may say that, why I'm talking about crisis preparation, but what are we talking about today after 1.5 years in the pandemic, and the pandemic still is there, and third wave is going to come and is being felt in many countries. So as Benjamin Franklin said that, by failing to prepare, we are preparing to fail. So even this account which Sushma gave, which Rashmi gave, about how we handled the crisis, step by step, is a preparation or a master class to handle future crisis. Because we know that if we prepare for crisis handling, then we will not be making a mess out of a crisis, and we'll be able to come out of it faster. So participative leadership definitely is the solution to handle crisis. And I'll just take you through 5 of my own experiences that how by participative leadership and by democratizing leadership in Shankar, we could face the crisis and we could come out of it quite successfully. So I represent Shankar, which is into contract logistics and supply chain. It's a global organization. We have a fair mix of people who are on roll and a big workforce of our agency staff. So I'm sorry for this. Yeah, I'm fostering three dogs from the street who have been abandoned. So it happens, and my apologies for this.
No problem, absolutely.
So yeah, so as I said that, I'll share my experience and what we did. I think for democratizing leadership, the first thing is sharing of information. And I think all the panelists talked about it, that, the sooner you share the transparent information with all members of your organization, you are at the same page. You're on the same page to take decisions. So initially we had this thing that, should we tell people that, we have got the CEO or one of the senior member down with COVID? Should we say, should we not say? Is it a taboo or is it what? And then we realized that, the more we shared, without sharing of names, but we said that, 20 people are in hospital, there have been 3 deaths. We found that people all felt that we are a team, we have to be together. So a sharing of information, be it, we are going through some crisis, or our warehouses are not opening up in this particular region, we are working on, we are going through the legal machinery. It helped a lot in bringing all of us together under the same roof while working all distributed. We had a case where we had one business unit which was going through bad times, in the sense that, in this business, the business was going down because they are into organizing of fairs and exhibition. And we know that in last 1 year, we hardly had any big events. So what happened, we had one option to give furloughs to the employees, and the other option was to just involve them. And these were around 12 people who have worked in the organization for a long time. They are operationally very good. What we did, and we decided that we need to train them in the next 11 days to do telemarketing, because we thought that we can just go through our big data of pharma customers. We can start knocking their doors. We can ask for business, because we are sure that the business is going to boom there. The customer would need our services, and this helped a lot. So sharing of information definitely helps in democratizing leadership. Second is trust building. And I think many of you talked about trust building, that, how the leader should build credibility. We in Shankar also, we gave bonuses. We gave salary increments last year in the month of Jan. And the senior team members said that we will not take salary increments. And this helped in building credibility in the organization. And also when we went for leave cut, we said, okay, we will surrender a certain portion of our leaves. We did it all, starting from me and the CEO. We announced it. Later on, as things got improved, by November, we took it back. The decision was rolled back. And a third point is about empowerment. Empowerment goes a long way in democratizing leadership, because when we say empowerment, we are saying that who has the decision making? Are you always looking towards the business unit head? Are you looking towards the CEO for taking small decisions? Or you are empowering people? And we have a long history of, empowering. We have a very robust authorization metrics. And we have this culture of entrepreneurship. And this helped a lot in wading through the crisis. One point, we spoke about engagement. And I think engaging with people at all levels helps in democratizing leadership, because Anadi spoke about talking to 60 people or 30 people in a day. Yes, we had, we generally have this once in 3 months town halls. In town halls, there are people who come in big numbers. There are some who just miss it out. But when you have a town hall on MS Team every week, you are democratizing information. You're democratizing the face time of the CEO. And the CEO face time, the face time of the senior leadership, the CFO face time, I think has never been the highest ever than in the last 1 year. Because all these channels were open. We had Zoom calls, we had MS Team calls, we had a WhatsApp group formed. And I think in most organizations we had WhatsApp group, and they were not top driven. We had WhatsApp group where we were sharing, our routine of workout. We were sharing of, how we are teaching our children, or how we are into gardening. People started, loving plants and buying plants and, taking care of them. there was a series of how to take care of succulents, and these all help a lot in breaking the monotony and breaking the the melancholy around the crisis. And last but not the least, I think the fifth topic, I've covered sharing of information, I've covered trust building, I've covered empowering and engagement. And I think the fifth piece and the most important key to democratized leadership is listening and acting on the insights. So we had a lot of connect session, and in one of the connect sessions, there was a youngster who said that, I have not cut my hair. I can't go to a salon. The salon is open. And the boss made such a nasty remark that, are you in a college days? You are in a corporate. Why are you having this kind of haggard look? And he felt very bad about it. And he spoke to me, and I got back to the manager and I said, we have to, what is the kind of culture we are building in the organization? And then we had these complaints about, particularly from women folks that, at 1 o'clock when they are serving food to their children, at that time, suddenly a call is, you are called on MS team and are you available? Come on the call. So where is the planning around it? And planning is so important, even during crisis. So we listened about it and we said we had to have breaks, no calls around this break, no calls without, without having a proper, putting them on the calendar. If it's such an urgent call, then also you have to check out the availability. So we built some method around the madness, one can say. And I think that these 5 things, these are my own personal lessons around how did we democratize leadership in the organization and could go through and overcome the crisis. Yeah.
Good. Thanks a lot, Renu. I think very, very interesting insights on democratization leadership. One of the ways I learned the leadership of democratization leadership is also a great tool which has been the WhatsApp leadership style, and the way people communicate over the groups and the teams and things like that. I think we have a long way. Democratization of leadership really means the empowerment to the last level.
Exactly, Ashish. When we said that, there was a time when we said WhatsApp is not official tool. I'm just saying you cannot have a call for a meeting or you can't be updating people WhatsApp. But I think the last 1.5 years, we say WhatsApp is also an office tool and it's an office communication channel.
Maybe in 20 years' time, we will not have an email itself existing in the world. So thank you very much, everyone. I think we are running out of time. So there was one question I think we'll skip for the benefit of the time. Now, Darshana, is there any question? Let us know. Otherwise, one last quick round we can do.
Mr. Anand, it's mentioned in the comment section. You may. Yes.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. So there is one question which has come from the audience, and the request is from each of the panelists. If we can share top 3 priorities going forward on whatever topic which comes to our mind. Maybe then we can start with that, and then we can just do a round robin. What could that be?
So I just try my hand. So for us, one of the key priorities is on financial resilience of the team. We found that resilience is so important to face a crisis, be it mental, be it physical, and we are signed up with a health app also for physical resilience. But I think most important thing is financial resilience. Why? Because we had many issues where we had a call from an employee. Her husband was in hospital. It was a Sunday. She wanted to 20,000 rupees. And we found that cash was so difficult in those times, and we have decided that we will focus on it. How are we going to focus on it? Yeah, still planning, but this is one of the key focus going forward. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. Anadi sir, what would be your opinion? Top 2-3 priorities, whatever comes to your mind.
Ashish, I do agree with what Renu ma'am is sharing.
Yes.
And other priorities, what we, during the pandemic and during this crisis period, support, no question asked.
Okay.
We trust our people, and I shared you whatever the expenses, we never audited those expenses. Whatever is the claimed was paid, and our advance paid to the hospitals and all those things. The second was a basic discipline to be in place. If what Renu ma'am was saying, 24/7 the call lands up. We had a basic discipline, at least a half an hour advance. You have to inform that there is a Zoom call or the other team meet, and then you connect. And if somebody is unable to connect, no fire, no shouting that because of some reason somebody is there. This protocol was followed and is still being followed. Even today, I deny any meeting call. Nobody will shout on me ki this was very important. Anyway. But I should have properly informed on the chat box itself ki I have another assignment, a personal engagement, and I should. And the third, but the topmost, was the business continuity and ensuring that production is taking place without disruption.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Manoj, what would be your take on 2 or 3 priorities according to you? Is Manoj around?
For me, 3 aspects, is 3 C's basically. One is care. And, it is very important, like I mentioned, we live to serve, and that serve with the care, So one is that. Second, from the individual leadership point of view, I say, be a cause in the matter. Cause in the matter is very, very important, for, having that in kind of a fire in the belly and be a cause in the matter. Nobody is like operating with any kind of threats in the mind, and be a cause in the matter. And third is, I feel, going forward, collective wisdom is very, very important. It's not only the individual brilliance or excellence, but the collective wisdom can really take things to the next level. So these are the 3 things.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Rashmi, what would be your take? Quickly, 1 or 2 key, quick takeaways around it, on the priorities.
Ms. Rashmi, you may have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So from my side, there are just 2 priorities on the leadership point of view. One is empathy. Empathetic leadership, I think, is above all today. And the second is, as I said before, to be future fluent, a future fluent person who is always embracing innovation and, agility and resilience together makes a person future fluent. And I think it's really required now.
Thank you very much. And Sushma, having the consulting experience, you would have seen companies from various sectors, or even personal experience. What do you think the 2-3 priorities going forward could be?
So for us and in general, I'm sure, Ashish, the one priority that we clearly have is our customer and the changed life cycle that they're going through at this point in time. And how can we align our thinking, our solutions, our insights to what our customers are now seeking, because their ecosystem has shifted quite drastically. And to do that, we obviously need to make sure that we focus on our people's life cycle, whether it is diversity and inclusion, whether it is wellness, whether it's flexibility. So it's really going to be an inside-out journey for us at SHL. If we are able to enable the inside journey with people, I'm sure we're going to impact the outside journey with our clients.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. And thank you, everyone. It was really very, very interesting and diverse views around it. Some personal key takeaways were also there. I think one common theme which I could understand, which is very common for everyone, is that the pandemic was, none of us were planned, and we always thought that the pandemic is there in China, it's not going to hurt us. Till the time it came to us and the national lockdown happened. So we were looking at a Chinese virus, and it will remain in China, nothing will happen here. So we got impacted, and then we quickly morphed ourselves, each one of us, in personal capacity and as well as professional capacity. And then people became the center of the life, and the life and livelihood. If I were to just use two words, the whole effort, if I just summarize by everyone, it was centered around life and livelihood both, because both had to coexist. Without that, it doesn't. If there's no life, then what's the meaning of livelihood? Livelihood, and if there's a life and no livelihood, then there's a bigger problem. So I think our collective effort in across all company was managing and balancing these two. I think we have done all of you have done a great service to the nation, to the society, to the organizations we work for. From the bottom of the heart, thank you very much. Orchestrating the such an esteemed panel was an honor for me, and thank you very much. Look forward being in touch with you, and thank you very much, audiences, listening to us. Over to FICCI team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. I mean, it was so insightful, right? I mean, if there's anything constant, that is the change, and what we call is the evolution, right? Support, no questions asked. Shows how the focus has been more people-centric, more empathetic. The way, I'm sure one of the panelists also mentioned about the way the job lists were conducted has evolved. Us getting used to the home environment, right? And us accepting it the way it is, and yet delivering the best has evolved. Organizations enabling COVID helplines, oxygen concentrators distribution, managing hospital beds for employees, shows how the role has just evolved, has become more dynamic, has become more challenging. In fact, one of the things to note was no layoffs, no salary cuts, and yet closing on a positive figure. Shows how impactful the current HR leadership roles are and how the leadership has been managing. So a huge round of applause for all our panelists, and more importantly to our moderator as well. With that said, thank you so much, Mr. Anand, and a big thank you to our panelists. A wonderful discussion indeed. And with that said, thank you once again. We move on to our next session, which touches upon another important aspect. The need and importance of more women in leadership role is the topic. Well, making way for more women in leadership is our next session. For this session, I'd like to invite Ms. Madhvi Lal, Lead HR, Head HR, Deutsche Bank, and Mr. Ashish Pradhan, President Asia, Sigma. Ladies and gentlemen, please make a note. We will be taking up your Q&As. Kindly go ahead, mention who would you want your question to be answered from. The bike platform will enable you to key in your questions. Towards the end of the session, we will take up your questions. Once again, presenting Ms. Madhvi Lal, Head HR, Deutsche Bank, and Mr. Ashish Pradhan, President Asia, Sigma. Over to you, ma'am and sir.
Hi, Ankita. Thank you so much for introducing us. And Ashish, it's a pleasure to be on a sort of a fireside chat with you. And I think it's brilliant for me to be sort of talking to a male colleague on women empowerment. So look forward to the discussion. So obviously you have a few questions for me and I have a few questions for you. And I thought we can just, have this conversation. And Ankita, please feed the questions into us as they come in. Happy to answer those questions. So let me start, Ashish, if it's okay with you.
Absolutely, Madhvi. Ladies
first. Ashish, I mean, if I look back, I've been in the sort of corporate sector for 30 years now, and when I started working, there was not really much of talk on diversity inclusion because that wasn't the focus area in those days, And obviously, in the last 15 years, I would say 10 to 15 years, there's been a lot of focus put on gender diversity, and rightly so, obviously, but I still think that the pace of increasing women at the workplace is not as fast as it should be, So, I mean, what is your perspective? Is gender parity an issue that is linked to industries, or is it? Are there some insights that you can share on that? Why is the pace a little slower than what we would like it to be?
Sure. Thank you very much, Madhvi, and thanks, Vicky, for introducing us. So yeah, I think it's a question that merits some amount of reflection, maybe even at a higher level. than just the corporate world, right? I think gender equality and gender diversity, inclusion, they are topics which are societal in nature, right? It's a reflection of society that we see in the corporate world. So as you see in India, I think gender equality, diversity is gaining momentum, but yet if you see it from a global perspective, we still have a long way to catch up. So I believe that the corporate life or the corporate world reflects what's happening in our society. Of course, there are disparities between different industries in corporate life. But before we come to that, I think one of the things that one has to understand here is the difference between the societal perspective and the corporate perspective is the whole business angle. So in a societal perspective, the moral, ethical way of leading one's life has a predominant place. Whereas if you look at the corporate life, of course, that is a very important, but people also look at what is in it for the business, right? And here I believe Indian corporates are still coming to terms with the fact that a well-balanced team in terms of gender is a far more quality team than a purely male-dominated team. And the reason is that I think the perspective that a woman gets on the table is very different to a male perspective, because and a male-dominated team develops certain blind spots which are well addressed by a woman on the team. And if you look at the whole spectrum between people orientation and task orientation, also, I think with their much let's say better developed EQ, women have generally a better balance between the two, and that also adds to the quality of decision making in an organization. So just to give you a short example, I mean, when I had the opportunity of working in Australia for a couple of years, and I was a plant manager, and trade unionism was very strong in Australia in those days. I'm talking about 2003, 2005, and we had a big dispute where we came to the brink of a shutdown, and there was a woman union leader in Australia on the shop floor who actually found a creative solution which was the right balance, and everything worked out well in the end. So it just brings into perspective that sometimes you need a creative solution which comes out from a woman rather than a man. So that's how I see it. And then coming to the industry topic, I would say manufacturing is lagging services in India. Generally, services has taken a lead in terms of gender equality, inclusion, having more women in leadership. So in services, I believe it's about 30% women participation in leadership, while in manufacturing, it's less than 10%. And this, I would attribute this mainly to the traditional legacy mindset that we still have in manufacturing. Having said that, it's changing, as I said, right? Because it also is a reflection of society. And the last point maybe I just want to make here is the factor of age, Madhvi. I think generally young leaders are more agile, more flexible, more open in their thought processes. And I now count myself a little bit on the older side, but yeah, I mean, older people have to work at it, and there I think there lies also the challenge. So I fully agree with your opening statement that yes, it is changing, but the pace of change is slow, in my opinion.
Thanks for that, Ashish. And I think you're right about the societal, overlay on all this gender inclusion, because I keep sort of reminding people that this is centuries of inequity that's built up, in our society, and not just Indian society, also the global society. For some reason, women got relegated to the background in terms of how society develops. So obviously, we've got to correct those imbalances. And there's a report that I read a couple of years back which said that if we do nothing on gender inclusion, it'll take us 200 years. So obviously we can't wait that long. So we've got to build that impetus on, gender inclusion
Absolutely
at the workplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I actually thought I'll just touch upon something that's close to my heart, because you talked about Indian companies and MNCs or whatever. I think obviously we're all similar journeys, I think, in terms of acceptance of inclusion. Do you think culture and values has a role to play in this? The culture and values of the organization.
That's a great observation. That's a great observation, Madhvi. I think you touched, from my perspective at least, you touched the nerve of the topic, hit the nail on the head. For me, everything starts from the value systems and the culture of an organization. It is really the value systems that an organization cherishes that really drives the culture of an organization. And I recently came across a very interesting definition of culture. I mean, we all have our own, let's say, favorite definitions. This is really my favorite one, which I came across a few months ago. Culture is the way people behave when no one's looking. And this is something that I truly believe in. And then this clearly tells us that culture then drives behavior. And when we talk about behavior, then we include decision making in it. Then we include how we implement decisions within an organization. And all this encompasses also gender equality. I mean, and then if you take it a step further, then what is the role of the top management or top leadership in this? Because the whole organization looks up to them as to how they show their commitment towards gender equality. Does the CEO really take his time to ensure that there is a balance in his team? If he doesn't demonstrate it, then it sends a very different message down the organization, whatever may be the targets or whatever may be the verbal messaging that is going around in the organization. So I believe that's an absolutely important point to reflect on. What is the culture? What is the value system? And hence, what's the culture we're driving in an organization? The other thing also, Madhvi, I would consider is what is the orientation of the organization in terms of short-term orientation versus long-term orientation. And this is where maybe after this, I would also like to hear your views on this as to hiring, let's say. When we try to hire people in senior positions, especially, and it takes time to get good top leaders, women leaders for positions, especially true for manufacturing, chemical, that kind of a traditional industry. Right? And here I believe it is the hiring manager, typically the top leader of the company, who needs to show commitment to the cause, who needs to show a more long-term orientation and be patient, and not typically jump to a short-term solution or a shortcut, which means that you typically go for someone you know or someone in the industry, and it's the same old boys club then, right? And that old boys club never really breaks unless someone takes a stand. And that's also then linked to what kind of culture that the organization is trying to build. Is it more a built to last culture, or is it like results at all costs and round? And there, I think this also has a big role to play as to whether we can get top-notch women leaders into the organization from the industry. But what's your perspective, Madhvi? Because you've been in this role for many years, right?
Very interesting, and I was reflecting on what you said, and you're absolutely right. I think it's bringing a person who's different from you into your team, and I think all of us struggle with it because we all have unconscious biases. We're all comfortable with similar people, really, mostly. I mean, you're more comfortable with your school friends, your college friends, etc. Right? So to bring in somebody who you don't who maybe slightly different from you is always difficult, both for men and women. So I think it does require commitment. It requires that focus, and I think that culture and values which you talked about. I think, and I think somewhere if we can accept that bringing a diversity in thought or gender or whatever will add value to me. Because ultimately the question is, what's in it for me? Why should I do this, right? If somehow we can show that bringing diverse perspectives will make you more successful as a leader, as a business, I think that's where, and I think that business case is long done and sorted. I mean, it's just about accepting it and,
Having said that, Madhvi, while it is long said, done, accepted, I mean, I interact with a lot of CEOs in the manufacturing side, medium scale companies, and I believe that it's still not as accepted as we believe it is, right? I mean, people still, maybe it is intellectually accepted, but maybe not fully emotionally absorbed in the system.
You're
So I think
absolutely right.
that's something
You're
that we need
absolutely
to be
right.
working on, I guess. Yeah.
Because it requires a little bit of hard work to get in somebody who's different from you, to build that, invest that time in building that person. So you're right, absolutely. And we've got to keep at it, really, you know, is what I think.
Keep at it.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to come back to the context of, you know, the COVID context. And I think the previous panel also talked about, you know, obviously the pandemic has made so many, you know, so much impact on us. And keeping to this topic, you know, there's a lot of talk about because of the pandemic, because of the virtual ways of working, we will be able to get more women coming back to the workplace because, you know, then location, your jobs might become more location agnostic, etc. Or, you know, that there will be more women coming into the workforce per se. Are you seeing that on the ground? Because, or is it the other way around, that women are actually leaving because they've got now multiple things to do at home, you know, take care of kids, of parents, in-laws, etc. Are you seeing any trends, or?
I think I see trends that are more positive, honestly, Madhvi. I mean, we all know that COVID has created such a tumult in our lives, which was unprecedented. So we didn't. So people have tried to adapt in the best way possible. But I see more positives here for gender inclusion in the workforce and in leadership than before. I mean, just to quote some numbers, if I consider that there's 30% women participation in corporate India in general, and then I move to the leadership scale, then it's only 11%. That means we lose quite a bit of women talent between the entry level to the leadership position. And most of the time it is because of this immense pressure that working women normally have to endure, which is you know, juggling home responsibilities with work responsibilities, which are ever increasing. And we have all seen this in you know, in our families in close quarters, right? My own mother was a working woman, and she had to refuse let's say promotions because she couldn't manage, and clearly the expectation was that she will manage and not my father, right? So I think this has changed with this new way of working, where technology has played the role of a big leveler. I think women can balance things better. And secondly, I think more importantly and interestingly, stereotypes are getting challenged, right? I mean, they've been, I see men bending their back in the kitchen and even on mopping the floor, and the role of a woman has now been transformed into not just as a nurturer of families, but also a provider for families. Because there's been so much uncertainty around employment. I mean, people, the so-called man of the house, who's the traditional provider, has lost his job, and then the woman is actually making the household function. So I believe, in all, I think COVID has played a very positive role. And I don't know how you see this, Madhvi.
I personally think it's a huge opportunity to just drive inclusion. And I'm not just talking about gender, also differently able people who are physically not able to come to work. Now's the time that organizations can actually bring them into the fold. You know, I feel that this is a time to build inclusion at all levels. You know, the traditional sort of you know, view that, you know, some people actually physically can't come in and therefore we can't hire them. All that can change. And I think that will happen because obviously, you know, as the pandemic will end at some point, I'm sure, and business will pick up even more, there will be a requirement for talent. And that's when I think organizations can actually leverage what they've learned in this last, you know, sort of in these last couple of years, and include more women, include more differently abled people into the workforce.
Yeah, and I think that also challenge the stereotypes, right? I mean, it is important that, because this goes one level below in terms of the topic. I mean, challenge the stereotype of who is the provider and who is the nurturer. I mean, I remember one story which I read about Indra Newey, who said that the day she became the chairman and CEO of Pepsi, she went home and she, you know, her mother opened the door and she was super excited. By your smile, I think you know the story. And then her mother said, "Hey, hang on, but go and get milk. There's no milk in the house." At least that's the way I read it. And this is what I think we need. It's an opportunity to challenge these stereotypes, and I think we all should make use of it and say, hey, why and why not? But yeah, I think fully agree. It doesn't really have to be just related to gender, but across the board, I guess, inclusion.
And why should it be either or? You could be provider plus nurturer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For both genders, really,
True.
No, thanks, Ashish, for that. And so I wanted to actually, I don't know, Ankita, if there are any questions, but we can go on. I have many sort of thoughts, and and maybe I'll ask one question. And Ankita, if there are questions, let us know. I think, Ashish, I wanted to actually ask you one question because obviously it's good to have men in the dialogue, and I keep saying that if you were to really drive gender diversity, you can't do it alone. You have to obviously have the men included because they're part of the workforce as well, right? So as a male senior industry leader, what is your personal take on gender? I mean, your personal, not your, what is your personal take on gender inclusion? And if you were to advise people on this call in terms of how can they make way for more women in leadership and of course in the organization, what would your advice be to them?
You really put me on the spot here, Audrey. So my personal take, honestly, so one of the values that I really believe in is fairness and equality. That's a value that I've always lived for, and hence gender equality and inclusion is a natural, let's say, extension of this value. So I'm fully committed to it, and if you look at my own organization, I've tried to drive this in the last 5 or 6 years that I've been with this company. With, I would say, not spectacular success, but I would say with moderate success because it takes time to change mindset and culture. So from my perspective, this is super important for the organization, and everyone has to have a stake in this agenda. Yeah. Coming to my advice, typically I think today it would be more a perspective than an advice. I think so. My perspective, which I would like to share for, let's say, for women, is to have belief. I think today's world is more flat than ever before. Though we see inequalities, but there are, I think, the opportunities that today's work environment offers are unprecedented, and I believe they should women can reflect on positioning, how they can position themselves confidently with full self-belief, and also be open to getting out of their comfort zones and challenging the status quo in a way. I believe if you want to swim, then you have to let go of the edge of the pool, right? And more often than not, when you are really struggling, you find a lifeguard emerging or materializing out of nowhere. So I think that amount of self-belief needs to be demonstrated, and that's a perspective that I could bring on the table for women. And for men, there's only one thing I want to share, Madhvi. I believe as men in an Indian society, we are privileged. It's a privilege, and that is we should be humble about it, and we should, as men, we should compete, but compete fairly, and that's something that I would like to leave as a perspective for my male colleagues in the industry.
That's so nice, Ashish. I think very, very well articulated, and I like your talk about if you have to leave the shore if you want to swim and go to the other side. And there is this research that was done, I think, many years ago, and I think it's sort of they keep refreshing the research that when a job becomes available and a woman is 80% ready for the job, she will not apply for that job because she thinks she's still got a 20% gap. And when on the other hand, when the man sees a job position and he's 60-70% ready, he will say, I can do the job and I'll apply. So I think it's something to do with the conditioning. I don't have insights as to why that happens. I think it's to do. So I think probably I like your advice about, building that confidence, women building the confidence themselves, and men helping them as well as they, as they sort of, build that confidence really. So yeah. Well, thanks for that. I think we don't have any questions from the audience, but anything, Ashish, that you want to, I don't know how much time do we have, Ankita? Are we on time? Sorry?
We've got a minute almost.
You're a minute. Okay. So then I'll probably just close the conversation, Ashish. Thank you very much for your time. And if I were to ask you, and I'm going to put you in a spot a bit, if you were to look at, when would you say we've achieved gender inclusion, at the workplace? What would happen in the workplace for you to say, yes, we've achieved it?
I would say if, I would like, typically an engineer, right? So I would like to go into numbers, but I think I will refrain from doing that. I would say if I walk into a room of a leadership meeting, and I see an equal representation, reasonably equal representation, and more importantly, an equal voice that one hears, which is between the male and the female. I would say, because leadership will drive everything, right? So if we can achieve this at a leadership level, in boardrooms, in management teams, and that is something that I would really wish to happen first in my organization, which is not really there yet, but then in the rest of corporate India.
Well, thanks, Ashish, for that, and all the best to you in your journey. It's so nice to hear that there is focus that you have, and I'm there are so many men and women. We're lucky to have so many men and women in India who are focusing on this agenda. So hopefully we'll see success as we go, and there are successes happening as we speak as well, and we'll see more.
Absolutely.
Ankita, over to you.
Very much.
Mr. Pradhan, just before we could conclude the fireside chat, we've got one question. If we could take it up, please.
Yeah. So where do we?
Right in the chat section.
In the chat, right? Okay. So the question, as I read it, is how can people just go beyond gender and break those unconscious biases and include other sections while hiring leadership roles, considering the type of options we have in the gig economy? Quite a long one, and I don't know. I think both of us can take this, Madhvi, and maybe I leave it to you first, and then I jump in later. Yeah?
Sure. No, Ashish, I think it's a very good question. And we all have unconscious biases. To say that only men have unconscious biases against women is wrong. I think all of us as human beings have unconscious biases. And this is, of course, as we've grown up, we've developed those unconscious. I think the first step to my mind is to be aware of the unconscious biases. I think, and that itself is a huge exercise, So for example, in Deutsche Bank, we ran this program for the leadership team, I think now 3 years back, where we had this facilitator who came and actually opened our eyes to our own biases. And then we sort of each one had to develop plans as to how do we overcome those biases. Once you're aware, then you can do something about them. So I would say that's what my advice would be. And Ashish, over to you to add.
Absolutely. And nothing much more to add to that. But I also believe, so I believe in a sort of 3-step approach where awareness is the first one, as you rightly said, Madhvi. It's awareness that I have, that one has these biases. Second is acceptance, that because sometimes it is difficult to even accept that one has and one works on these biases, or takes decisions based on these biases. And finally, then you act on it. And this becomes a little bit philosophical here, because I believe that once you become aware, and just through awareness, change happens. Yeah, so awareness, acceptance, and action is the mantra, let's say, that I live by, and maybe that would help all of us to overcome these biases. Ankita, is that all?
Perfect. That's all for the day. Thank you so much. It was indeed wonderful having the two of you right here on the Fireside Chat. With that said, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I would urge all of you all to please go ahead, share your feedback on the feedback tab on the Byte platform. Once again, Ms. Lal, Mr. Pradhan, thank you so much for such a wonderful session. And I would
pleasure.
Thank you, Madhvi. Thank you, Ankita, and all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. With that said, I would now like to invite Ms. Mentee Mehrotra, Deputy Director, FICCI, to deliver the concluding remark for this colloquium.
Thank you, Ankita. Thanks, Madhvi. Thanks, Ashish. I think this was one of my favorite sessions for the day. In fact, all of them were very insightful. So taking this opportunity to thank SHL for being our partner and Sapphire team for such teamwork and leadership. Thank you all. Thank you, audience and distinguished speakers for joining us today. And you all have a lovely weekend. Thank you all.